The reptilian admiral's yellow eyes gleamed as he zoomed in on a cluster of star systems marked in red. "Behold, esteemed colleagues, the human infestation." His forked tongue flicked out, tasting the recycled air with disgust. Worlds all crawling with these soft-skinned vermin.
Ow.
The hologram shifted, showing detailed scans of human colonies. Simple metal and concrete structures dotted planetary surfaces. Basic fusion reactors provided power. Crude railguns served as planetary defense systems. The assembled alien warlords, it looked like children playing with toys. "Pathetic," rumbled General Krexar, his forearms flexing with barely contained violence. The Mondorian warrior's Katanus exoskeleton gleamed under the chamber's harsh lighting. "My hatchlings could conquer these worlds with mining equipment." Ambassador Zithel, the insectoid representative from the Hive Collective, clicked, her mandibles in agreement. Her compound eyes reflected the hologram's light as she spoke in her buzzing voice. "Our deep space scouts have observed their vessels. Chemical rockets, Admiral. They still burn liquid fuel to escape their own gravity wells. Our ancestors abandoned such primitive methods 10,000 cycles ago." Vexmore manipulated the display, showing human ship designs. Bulky metal cylinders with massive fuel tanks, crude nuclear engines, and armor plating that looked like it had been welded together in a backyard workshop. The alien council erupted in hissing laughter. "Look at this monstrosity," the Admiral pointed to an image of a human battleship. "They call it a dreadnought. It masses barely 50,000 tons and carries projectile weapons." Projectile weapons. As if we were still throwing rocks at each other. The laughter died as Vexmore's expression grew serious. His scales shifted from deep green to angry red, a sure sign of rising fury among his species. "But these primitive mammals dare to expand into territories that belong to us. Every day, more of their colony ships venture into systems we have claimed for millennia." The hologram zoomed out, showing human expansion vectors stretching toward established alien territories. Red arrows indicated projected human settlement patterns, all pointing directly into the heart of the 12 Worlds Alliance. "They multiply like a plague," hissed Warlord Veshka, her serpentine body coiling in agitation. "Our intelligence reports estimate over 200 billion humans across their territories, and their reproduction rate exceeds ours by significant margins." Admiral Vexmore nodded grimly. Quantity over quality, as expected from such a primitive species. But even insects can become dangerous in sufficient numbers. He gestured to the tactical display showing human military assets they possess. Approximately 2,000 combat vessels. Though calling them combat vessels is generous, most are converted cargo haulers with weapons grafted onto their hulls. The Crystalline Collective's representative, a being of living mineral called Corthane, resonated with a sound like wind through crystal caves. "My analysis indicates their technology level places them at least 8 centuries behind our current capabilities. Their fastest ships require months to traverse distances. Our vessels cover in days."
"Ugly, why we must act now?"
Vexmore declared, his massive fists slamming into the table. The entire chamber shook from the impact. "While they remain weak, while they remain scattered, while they remain ignorant of our true power." The holographic display shifted again, showing detailed battle plans. Red vectors indicated strike routes into human space. Yellow markers showed primary targets. Green zones marked territories to be claimed after the conquest. "I propose Operation Cleansing Fire," the Admiral announced. "A swift, decisive campaign to eliminate the human threat permanently. We deploy our combined fleets in 3 waves. First wave eliminates their outer colonies and any military resistance. Second wave targets their industrial worlds, cleanses their homeworld and any remaining population centers." General Krexthar leaned forward, his warrior instincts engaged. "Timeline estimates?" 6 standard months for complete pacification, Vexmore replied confidently. "It's possibly less if they surrender after witnessing our power during the initial strikes." The chamber fell silent as each representative considered the proposal. Finally, Ambassador Zethel spoke for the Hive Collective. The humans have shown no signs of advanced military doctrine. Their battles consist primarily of crude frontal assaults with minimal tactical coordination. Their communication systems are laughably primitive, added Corthane. Electromagnetic radiation limited to light-speed transmission. We could sever their command structure within hours. Warlord Veshka's eyes glittered with predatory hunger. My fleet requires new hunting grounds. These humans will provide adequate sport for my warriors before their inevitable destruction. One by one, each representative voiced their agreement. The vote was unanimous. Humanity would be exterminated. Admiral Dexmore stood, his 7-foot frame imposing even among the gathered alien commanders. I volunteer to lead the first wave personally. The Deathbringer and my personal battle group will spearhead the initial assault. The reptilian admiral was already envisioning his triumph. He would be remembered as the commander who eliminated the human pest before it could spread further across the galaxy. His name would be carved into the victory monuments of 12 worlds. Within 72 hours, the largest battle fleet in galactic history began assembling at the edge of human space. 300 Valian warships, each one capable of reducing a planet to molten slag. Supporting them were vessels from the other Alliance members, Mandorian assault carriers, Hive Collective swarm ships, crystalline siege platforms, and dozens of other deadly craft. The crews aboard these vessels shared their commander's confidence. They were the heirs to civilizations that had ruled space for millennia. They possessed weapons that could crack planets, shields that could withstand stellar radiation, experience gained from conquering 100 different species. Against them stood humanity, primitive, isolated, and completely unaware that their extinction had just been decided in a conference room, years away. Admiral Dexmore settled into his command throne as the fleet prepared to jump to hyperspace. Soon, he thought, the galaxy would be cleansed of the human infestation forever. The bridge of the Deathbringer hummed with anticipation as Admiral Slet's fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Tizen system. The reptilian commander expected to see a small mining colony scrambling to evacuate, maybe sending out desperate distress calls that would never reach help in time. Instead, his sensor operator's voice cracked with confusion. Admiral, we're detecting active sensor sweeps from the colony. They're scanning us. This Mor's yellow eyes narrowed. Impossible. Our intelligence reports stated their sensor arrays were decades old. They shouldn't have detected us. Until we were practically on top of them? Sir, they're hailing us, the communications officer reported, his scales rippling with nervous energy. Put it through, Dexmore commanded, settling back in his command throne. This would be amusing. Perhaps the humans would beg for mercy. A crackling voice filled the bridge, speaking in the crude human language that the Dominion's translators had learned to interpret. Attention alien vessels, says Tizen Control. You are entering human space without authorization. State your intentions, or prepare to be fired upon. Ow. The bridge erupted in hissing laughter. This Morse mandibles clicked. In amusement, they think they can threaten us. It'll open a channel. Insignificant humans, Dex Morris' voice boomed across space. You will surrender immediately. Evacuate your colony and submit to Dominion authority. You have 1 standard hour to comply. The response came back without hesitation. This is Captain Donghu of the Tizon Defense Force. We don't surrender. We don't run, and we don't give aliens an inch of human dirt. You want our world? Come and take it. Before Dexmore could respond, his tactical officer's voice cut through the bridge chatter. Admiral, single vessel approaching on intercept course. Appears to be a modified cargo freighter. Through the main view screen, Dexmore watched a battered human ship approaching his massive fleet. The vessel looked like it had been assembled from spare parts. Its hull was a patchwork of different metals, welded together with obvious repair work. Massive engines had been grafted onto its rear section, and strange protrusions jutted from its sides. One ship, Dexmore muttered, his voice dripping with contempt. They send one pathetic freighter against 300 warships. The human vessel, identified as the Lucky Strike, continued its approach. Its captain's voice crackled over the Come system. You aliens picked the wrong system to mess with. My Captain Donghyuk, and this is my ship. You've got 30 seconds to turn around and get out of our space before we turn you into scrap metal. The bridge erupted in laughter again. Even Nexmore's normally stoic tactical officers were hissing with amusement. A single converted freighter threatening the pride of the Dominion fleet was beyond ridiculous. Signal them to surrender, Nexmore ordered, wiping tears from his eyes. This is too entertaining to end quickly. Admiral Vexmore's massive claws scraped against the command console as he studied the holographic star map floating before him. The war chamber of the Valian flagship Deathbringer hummed with the quiet efficiency of a civilization that had conquered half the known galaxy. Around the circular table sat representatives from 11 other alien species, each more deadly than the last. No response, sir. They're still approaching. Then destroy them, the Admiral commanded with a dismissive wave of his claw. Burst should vaporize that scrap heap. The lucky strike was now within weapons range. Vexmore expected to watch it disintegrate under his ship's overwhelming firepower. Instead, something impossible happened. The human freighter opened fire first. Brilliant beams of energy lanced out from the lucky strike, striking the Dominion flagship's forward shields. The bridge shook slightly from the impact. Vexmore's tactical officer stared at his console in disbelief. Sir, they've actually damaged our forward shield generators. How is that possible? Impossible, Dexmore snarled. Their weapons are primitive mining lasers. They shouldn't be able to scratch our armor. The humans had done something the Dominion's intelligence had never anticipated. They had taken their industrial equipment and turned it into weapons of war. The mining lasers that carved through asteroids had been overcharged, their power cores pushed beyond safe limits. Targeting systems designed for precision work had been modified for combat. The lucky strike was essentially a flying bomb, every system pushed to its absolute breaking point. Return fire, Dexmore commanded. The Deathbringer's main guns swiveled toward the human vessel and fired. Plasma beams that could melt through starship armor struck the lucky strike dead center. The ship's hull glowed white-hot, pieces of metal spinning away into space. But the freighter didn't die. Instead, it accelerated directly toward the Dominion. Flagship, ramming speed. Captain Donghook's voice roared over the cum. For humanity. The lucky strike slammed into the Deathbringer's port side, its overloaded engines detonating in a massive explosion. The Dominion flagship rocked from the impact, hull breaches opening along its flank. Damage report, Dexmore roared. Port shields down, hull breaches on 7 decks, and sir, ... The tactical officer's voice trailed off in shock. What? More. Ships approaching. Dozens of them. The asteroid field around Taizan came alive with movement. What Dexmore had assumed were floating rocks turned out to be camouflaged human vessels. Mining ships, cargo haulers, even a luxury passenger liner emerged from hiding. Each one had been modified for war, bristling with improvised weapons and armor plating. The human fleet was a collection of misfits and desperate courage. The mining vessel, Iron Mountain, had replaced its ore processing equipment with missile launchers. The cargo hauler Steady Eddie sprouted gun turrets from every available surface. Even the yacht Golden Dreams had been turned into a weapons platform, its elegant lines now hidden beneath crude armor plates. This is Captain Yuna of the Iron Mountain, a woman's voice crackled over the cum. Welcome to human space, you alien scum. Hope you're ready for a fight? The improvised human fleet attacked with desperate fury. They couldn't match the Dominion's firepower or technology, but they had something the aliens didn't expect. Pure determination. When their weapons failed, they used their ships as kinetic weapons. When their shields collapsed, they rammed enemy vessels. The mining ship Deep Digger sacrificed itself to take out a Dominion cruiser, its captain screaming defiance as his ship's reactor went critical. The freighter Lucky Penny managed to disable 2 alien destroyers before being torn apart by plasma fire. Sir, his tactical officer reported, his voice shaking, we've lost 6 ships. The humans they're fighting like madmen. Dexmore watched in stunned silence as his supposedly invincible fleet was mauled by converted cargo ships. This wasn't warfare as he understood it. This was something primal, something savage. Humans weren't just fighting for territory or resources. They were fighting for their very existence. "Order all units to bombard the colony from orbit," he commanded. "End this madness." But when his ships tried to approach Taizan itself, they found more surprises waiting. The mining colony had been turned into a fortress. Massive plasma cannons, improvised from industrial equipment, fired up from the planet's surface. The humans had somehow turned their own infrastructure into a weapon. For 3 weeks, the battle raged. The Dominion had expected a quick victory, but the humans turned every rock, every building, every tunnel into a weapon or a trap. Civilians fought alongside miners and security guards. Children too young to hold weapons carried supplies to the front lines. Elderly colonists operated defensive systems with grim determination. The final assault on Taizan took place in the colony's main mining complex. Admiral Dexmore himself led the ground forces, his personal guard of elite Dominion warriors advancing through tunnels that had been turned into killing fields. "Sir," his lieutenant reported, "the humans have rigged the entire complex with explosives. They're going to bring the whole mountain down on us." "Then we advance faster," Dexmore snarled. "I want every human in this system dead." The battle for the mining complex was brutal. The humans had turned conveyor belts into defensive positions, mining equipment into weapons, and even the ventilation systems into traps. Every corridor was contested, every room paid for in blood. When the complex finally fell, Dexmore stood in the ruins of what had been the colony's central hub. Around him lay the bodies of humans who had fought until their last breath. Men, women, even teenagers who should have been in school instead of on a battlefield. "This wasn't supposed to happen," he muttered, staring at the devastation. His fleet had lost 18 ships to what should have been a defenseless mining colony. Hundreds of his finest warriors lay dead in the tunnels below. The humans had been defeated, but at a cost that made victory taste like ash. And across the galaxy, similar reports were coming in from other human colonies. None of them were surrendering. None of them were backing down. The humans were fighting back, and they were making the Dominion pay for every inch of ground in blood. Command center aboard the Deathbringer had become a place of constant bad news. Admiral Dexmore's scales had shifted to a permanent angry red as reports poured in from across human space. What was supposed to be a quick extermination campaign had turned into a grinding nightmare. "Admiral," his communications officer called. "Out." His voice tight with disbelief. "Incoming transmission from Battle Group 7 at Busan Station." The holographic display flickered to life, showing the aftermath of what should have been another easy victory. Instead of a conquered space station, Dexmore saw a massive debris field where Busan Station used to orbit. In the center of the destruction, the twisted remains of 6 Dominion warships drifted like broken toys. "What happened?" Dexmore demanded. The surviving ship captain's image appeared, his reptilian features scarred and blackened from battle damage. "The humans, sir. They rigged their entire fusion reactor to overload. When our ships moved in for the final assault, they detonated the whole station. The explosion took out our entire battle group. Gamora's claws scraped against his command. Throne? They destroyed their own station? Why would they sacrifice their own people? Because they'd rather die than surrender, Admiral. Every human on that station knew they were going to die, and they decided to take as many of us with them as possible." Before Dexmore could respond, another report came in from New Incheon. The colony there had done something even more impossible. They had somehow turned their atmospheric processing plants into weapons, launching massive projectiles into orbit that had crippled 3 Dominion cruisers. "How?" Dexmore roared. "How are they doing this?" His intelligence officer, a nervous creature named Velkin, pulled up tactical analyses on the main screen. "Sir, the humans are adapting our own captured technology. They study every piece of wreckage, every disabled ship. Somehow, they're learning from each encounter." The reports kept coming. On Gwangju Prime, human colonists had turned their mining equipment into orbital defense platforms. On Jeju Station, they had rigged cargo containers to explode like massive bombs when Dominion ships tried to board them. Each human world fought differently, but they all fought with the same desperate courage. Then came the report that changed everything. Admiral, his long-range sensor specialist, announced, his voice trembling with fear, massive fleet movements detected from the human inner systems. Ship counts are, sir, they're in the thousands. Sir, these aren't military ships, not originally. The sensor data appeared on the main display, showing thousands of vessels moving toward the war zone. They're converting everything. Cargo haulers, passenger ships, construction platforms, even luxury yachts. They're building a fleet faster than our computers can track. The Admiral stared at the display in disbelief. In the space of just 3 months, humanity had assembled the largest fleet in their history. Ships that had been carrying tourists or hauling freight were now bristling with weapons. Passenger liners had been turned into troop transports. Even garbage haulers had been fitted with missile launchers. They're mobilizing their entire civilization, Velkin whispered. Every ship, every crew, every person capable of fighting. The first encounter with this improvised human fleet shattered everything Nexmore thought he knew about warfare. The battle took place near the Mokpo system, where his forces had been preparing to assault another human colony. The human fleet didn't approach in neat formations like civilized species. Instead, they came in chaotic waves, their ships painted in wild colors and covered with crude armor plating. Some vessels had weapons welded to their hulls. Others trailed clouds of debris that they used to confuse Dominion sensors. Leading the human attack was a ship that defied all logic. The Indomitable, commanded by Captain Hagen, should have been destroyed in the first minute of combat. It was nothing more than a converted cargo hauler, its hull patched together from scavenged materials. But somehow, the Indomitable had shields that could absorb punishment meant for much larger warships. Its weapons, clearly salvaged from destroyed Dominion vessels, tore through alien armor like it was paper. How is that ship still fighting? Exmoor demanded as he watched the Indomitable shrug off direct hits from 3 of his cruisers. His tactical officer replied, his voice filled with awe, "They've somehow improved our own shield technology. The energy signatures are similar to our designs, but more efficient. They've made our weapons better than we ever could." The battle raged for hours. The humans fought with a style that made no sense to the Dominion's tactical computers. They used damaged ships as kinetic weapons, ramming them into enemy formations at full speed. They deployed clouds of space junk to hide their movements. Then, struck from impossible angles, Captain Minho, of the human vessel Soul's Pride, had turned his passenger liner into a missile platform. The ship that once carried families on vacation now launched salvos of improvised rockets that could crack Dominion hulls. When his weapons ran out, he rammed his ship into a Dominion battlecruiser, shouting defiance until the very end. They're not fighting like soldiers, Dexmore realized with growing horror. They're fighting like cornered animals. Every single one of them would rather die than surrender. The human fleet commander, Admiral Jung Soo, broadcast a message to the entire Dominion force. "You came to our space looking for easy prey. Instead, you found us. We don't care about your superior technology or your ancient empire. We care about our families, our homes, and our freedom. And we'll fight for them until our last breath." What truly terrified Dexmore was how fast the humans were learning. After each battle, they analyzed captured Dominion technology and improved it. Their engineers took alien weapons apart, figured out how they worked, and then made them better. Their factories, originally designed to build civilian goods, were retooled to mass-produce military equipment. Within 6 months, human ships were carrying weapons that outperformed Dominion designs. Their armor was stronger, their shields more efficient, their engines faster. They had taken the technology of a civilization that had ruled space for millennia and improved it. In mere months, the humans had also learned to fight as a unified force. Messages flew between their fleets at light speed, coordinating attacks across dozens of star systems. They shared tactical data, weapon designs, and battle strategies with a speed that amazed even Dominion military analysts. Sir Velkin reported, "During one particularly devastating battle, the The humans are using our own communication networks against us. They've hacked into our command frequencies and are intercepting our orders. Dexmore watched in stunned silence as a human strike force, led by Captain So Young and the converted mining ship Iron Will, appeared exactly where his reinforcements were supposed to arrive. The humans had been listening to Dominion communications and had set a trap. The Iron Will and her escorts tore through the Dominion relief force like a plasma torch through ice. Ships that had terrorized a dozen worlds were reduced to scrap metal by human vessels that looked like they had been assembled in a junkyard. They're learning faster than we can adapt, Dexmore admitted to his staff. Every engagement teaches them something new about our tactics, our technology, our weaknesses. The reports from the front lines grew more desperate each day. Human fleets were now pushing into Dominion space, their ships no longer the crude conversions of the early war. These new vessels were purpose-built warships, designed using captured alien technology but improved with human innovation. The flagship of the human advance was the Defiance, commanded by Admiral Parkus Sue. The massive vessel had been built from the ground up as a weapon of war, its hull bristling with the most advanced weapons the humans could create. It led a fleet of similarly powerful ships, all crewed by humans who had seen their worlds attacked and wanted revenge. The hunters have become the hunted, Dexmore muttered as he watched his once mighty fleet retreat from yet another human advance. The species he had dismissed as primitive mammals had awakened something terrible. They had turned their entire civilization into a war machine, and that machine was now grinding the Dominion into dust. The humans were no longer fighting for survival. Now they were fighting for victory, and they showed no signs of stopping until every alien ship was driven from their space. The ancient fortress world of Veltar hung in space like a jewel of death, surface covered in weapon emplacements that had repelled invaders for over 3 millennia. Massive orbital defense platforms, each one the size of a small moon, drifted in perfect formation around the planet. Energy shields that could deflect asteroid impacts shimmered around the world's atmosphere. Admiral Dexmore stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring at the tactical display that showed the human fleet approaching his homeworld. Just 6 months ago, he had commanded 300 warships and believed humanity would be extinct within weeks. Now he commanded fewer than 50 vessels, and the humans were at the gates of his most sacred world. "Status report," he demanded, his voice barely containing the rage and fear that battled within him. "Sir," his tactical officer replied, scales pale with exhaustion. "Long-range sensors detect massive hyperspace signatures approaching. The human fleet is ... It's enormous." The first ships began materializing from hyperspace, and Dexmore felt his heart sink. Not dozens of vessels, but hundreds. The human fleet stretched across space in a formation that defied belief. At its center was a massive dreadnought that dwarfed even Dominion battleships. "Identify that flagship," Dexmore ordered. "Sir, it's the Retribution, commanded by Captain Unesio. Intelligence reports she lost her family when we attacked the Sol colony. She's been hunting our fleets ever since." The Retribution was a monument to human determination and ingenuity. Built from the hull of a massive cargo hauler, it had been transformed into the most powerful warship humanity had ever created. Its armor was a patchwork of salvaged alien materials welded together with human innovation. Weapon ports bristled along its length, each one housing technology that had been stolen from the Dominion and improved beyond recognition. "How did they get here so fast?" Dexmore whispered, watching more human ships continue to arrive. "Outer defense networks should have detected them days ago." His sensor specialist's voice cracked with disbelief. "Sir, they're not using the normal hyperspace routes. Somehow, they've mapped our entire military transportation network and found ways to travel through it faster than we ever could." The humans had done the impossible. They had studied captured Dominion navigation computers, reverse-engineered hyperspace technology that had taken the aliens millennia to perfect, and improved it in mere months. Their ships could now travel the same routes as Dominion vessels, but with greater speed and efficiency. Captain Unesio's voice crackled across the communication channels. Speaking in accented but clear Dominion standard language, Admiral Vexmore, this is Captain Unesio of the Human Defense Fleet. You brought war to our worlds. You killed our families. Now we bring war to yours. The human fleet began its assault with precision that would have impressed Dominion military academies. They didn't charge forward in the desperate, chaotic attacks of the early war. Instead, they moved with calculated efficiency, each ship group targeting specific objectives. Vexmore's yellow eyes widened in shock. Impossible. Our intelligence reported they had maybe 50 combat vessels in their entire space navy. Captain Jinwoo led the first strike force, his converted mining ship Iron Thunder leading a squadron of similarly modified vessels toward the orbital defense platforms. These platforms had protected Veltar for 3,000 years, their massive plasma cannons capable of vaporizing entire fleets. But the humans had learned from studying Dominion technology. They knew exactly where the platform's weak points were located. Deploying mining charges, Jinwoo announced over the tactical channel. His ships released hundreds of small devices that had once been used to break apart asteroids. Now they had been modified with Dominion explosive technology and human innovation. The charges attached themselves to the orbital platform's shield generators and detonated simultaneously. The explosions weren't large enough to destroy the massive war structures, but they were perfectly placed to overload the shield systems. Impossible, Vexmore breathed as he watched his invincible defenses flicker and fail. Those platforms have protected us for millennia. Commander Subin's fighter squadron chose that moment to strike. Her pilots flew ships that looked like metal coffins with engines attached, converted, cargo pods that had been stripped down and fitted with the most advanced weapons humanity could build. They shouldn't have been able to compete with Dominion's elite fighters. Instead, they tore through the alien squadrons like plasma through tissue paper. "How are they so fast?" demanded this Morse flight commander, as his elite pilots were systematically destroyed by what looked like flying scrap metal. The answer was simple, but terrifying. The humans had taken Dominion fighter technology, removed everything they considered unnecessary, like life support systems and pilot comfort, and used the extra space for more powerful engines and weapons. Their pilots flew in conditions that would kill most aliens. But humans had always been remarkably adaptable. Subin's voice came over the comm as her fighter dove through a formation of Dominion interceptors, her weapons carving through their ranks. "This is for Busan Station, you alien scum." The battle for Veltar raged for 18 hours. The humans attacked with a coordination that seemed impossible for such a young species. Their fleet moved like a single organism, each ship supporting the others, every attack precisely timed for maximum effect. They had studied every Dominion battle tactic, analyzed every engagement, and learned from every defeat. Now they used that knowledge against their former enemies with devastating effectiveness. The planetary shields, Veltar's last line of defense, held for 7 hours before the concentrated fire of the human fleet finally overwhelmed them. The energy barriers that had protected the Dominion homeworld for centuries flickered and died. "Sir," his communications officer reported, his voice hollow with defeat. "Incoming transmissions from the Alliance Council." "Put them through," Vexmore ordered. Or though he already knew what he would hear. One by one, 6 of the 12 Alliance species announced their withdrawal from the war. The Crystalline Collective, the Hive Collective, the Mandorian clans, all of them were seeking separate peace agreements with humanity. "The humans have offered us terms," explained Ambassador Krextall of the Mandorian clans. "They will spare our worlds if we cease hostilities immediately and provide reparations for the damage we've caused." "Cowards!" Vexmore roared. "We stand together or we fall together." "We've already fallen," replied the crystalline representative. "The humans have shown they can defeat us anywhere, anytime. Further resistance is suicide." As his allies abandoned him, Vexmore received a direct transmission from the human fleet. Captain Unisio's face appeared on his screen, her eyes hard as steel, but her voice surprisingly calm. "Admiral, your homeworld is defenseless. Your allies have abandoned you. Your fleet is broken, but we're not like you. We don't slaughter civilians or destroy worlds for pleasure." She paused, letting her words sink in before continuing. "Here are our terms. Withdraw all Dominion forces from human space immediately. Provide coordinates for any human prisoners or slave populations in your territory. Do this, and we'll let your people live. Vexmore stared at the human captain, seeing something in her eyes that chilled him to his core. Not hatred, not rage, but absolute certainty. The humans had become something far more dangerous than the savage primitives he had once dismissed. They had become unstoppable. What if I refuse? He asked. Unesio's expression didn't change. And we'll do to Veltar what you did to our colonies. The choice is yours, Admiral. Around him, Vexmore's bridge crew watched in silence as their commander faced the destruction of everything they had built. The Dominion Empire, which had ruled space for millennia, was being offered survival by the very species they had tried to exterminate. Sir, his communications officer whispered, the remaining fleet commanders are requesting permission to surrender. Vexmore looked at his tactical display, showing the handful of ships that remained from his once mighty armada. 37 vessels out of the 300 he had started with. The humans had turned his own tactics against him, used his own technology to defeat him, and offered him mercy he didn't deserve. Signal the fleet, he said finally, his voice barely audible. All ships are to withdraw from human space immediately. The war is over. As his battered fleet limped away from Veltar, Vexmore realized that humanity had won something far more valuable than a military victory. They had proven that mercy could be more powerful than vengeance, that civilization could triumph over savagery. The hunters had not just become the hunted. They had become something far more dangerous. They had become judges. The escape pod tumbled through the void, single occupant staring through the small porthole at the debris field that stretched in all directions. Admiral Vexmore could barely recognize the twisted metal remains as what had once been the Dominion's most powerful battle station. The Eternal Dominance had been a fortress in space, home to 50,000 of his finest warriors. Now, it was nothing but scrap metal and memories. His life support systems beeped weakly, warning him that oxygen was running low. The reptilian admiral didn't care. He had failed his people, his empire, his entire civilization. The humans had done more than defeat the Dominion. They had completely destroyed everything he had believed about the natural order of the galaxy. 3 days passed before the patrol ship found him. Vexmore had expected to die alone in the darkness, but his pod's emergency beacon had continued transmitting. When the small vessel appeared on his scanner, he felt a mix of relief and terror. Relief that he might live. Terror of what the humans would do to him. The ship that docked with his escape pod was nothing like the massive warships that had crushed his fleet. It was small, clearly converted from civilian use, with the words Harmony painted on its hull in simple human letters. Through the airlock came a young human woman in a simple uniform, followed by 2 crew members. Admiral Vexmore of the Valiant Dominion, she said, her voice calm and steady. It wasn't a question. She knew exactly who he was. The admiral expected to be dragged away in chains to face execution or worse. Instead, the human captain extended her hand. I'm Captain Minyoung of the Human Defense Patrol. You need medical attention. Vexmore stared at the offered hand, confused. By the gesture, in Dominion culture, showing your hand to an enemy was a sign of weakness. But the human woman seemed genuinely concerned about his welfare. Why? He finally managed to ask, as her medical officer began treating his injuries. Why? Aren't you killing me? Minyoung settled into a chair across from him, her eyes studying his reptilian features with curiosity rather than hatred. Because someone needs to tell the galaxy what happened here. Someone needs to warn them. She activated a holographic projector, and Vexmore gasped at what he saw. The display showed human space, but not the scattered collection of weak colonies he remembered from intelligence reports. Instead, he saw a vast unified territory that encompassed nearly a quarter of the known galaxy. Thousands of star systems, all under human control. This can't be accurate, he whispered. 6 months ago, you barely controlled 50 systems. 6 months ago, you forced us to unite, Minyoung replied quietly. Before your attack, humanity was fractured. Dozens of independent colonies, separate governments, competing corporations. We argued about everything. Trade routes, mining rights, territorial boundaries. She manipulated the display, showing the progression of human expansion over the past months. But when you attacked our worlds, when you killed our families, you gave us something we'd never had before, a common enemy. Every human colony, every corporation, every government joined together for the first time in our species' history. Dexmore watched in stunned silence as the display showed human industrial output over the war's duration. The numbers were impossible. In 6 months, humanity had built more ships than the Dominion had constructed in 50 years. How? He asked. How did you build so much so quickly? Min-Young smiled, but there was no joy in it. Because we turned our entire civilization into a war machine. Every factory, every shipyard, every resource in human space was dedicated to one goal: stopping you. The display shifted again, showing the current positions of human fleets throughout the galaxy. Dexmore's eyes widened as he saw the massive formations moving toward the remaining Alliance worlds. We tried peace first, Min-Young continued, her voice taking on a harder edge. For decades, we sent diplomats to your worlds. We offered trade. Agreements, mutual defense pacts, cultural exchanges. We wanted to join the galactic community as equals. She pulled up archived communications, human. Diplomatic messages that had been sent to the Dominion and other Alliance species over the years. All of them had been ignored or rejected with contempt. Your people called us primitives, vermin, insects to be exterminated. But you made one crucial mistake, Admiral. You assumed that because we were young, we were weak. The medical officer finished his work and stepped back. Dexmore's injuries had been treated with the same care they would have given to one of their own crew. The contrast with how the Dominion treated prisoners was stark. What happens now? Dexmore asked. Min-Young's expression grew grim. Now you deliver a message to what's left of the Alliance. Every species that stood with the Dominion faces the same choice: surrender completely or be destroyed. She showed him tactical displays of human forces approaching Alliance worlds. The fleets were massive, each one larger than the entire Dominion Navy had been at the war's start. The Mandorian clans have already surrendered. So have the Crystalline. Collective and for other species. They're providing reparations and helping us locate human prisoners and slave populations. Dexmore thought of the billions of beings across Alliance space who would soon face humanity's wrath. And if they refuse, then they'll join the Dominion in extinction. Min-Young replied without hesitation. We don't want an empire, Admiral. We just want to be left alone. But if someone attacks us, if someone tries to enslave us or exterminate us, we will not stop until the threat is completely eliminated. The human captain stood and walked to the ship's viewport, gazing out at the debris field. Your battle station here had a crew of 50,000. When they refused to surrender, when they kept firing on our rescue ships trying to save Dominion survivors, we had no choice. Dexmore followed her gaze and saw the twisted remains of what had once been his people's proudest achievement. The eternal dominance had been designed to last forever, its name a boast about Dominion's superiority. Now it was a tomb drifting. Through space? We spent 3 hours trying to convince them to surrender, Min-Young continued. We offered safe passage, prisoner exchanges, medical aid for their wounded. They responded by targeting our hospital ships. She turned back to face him, and Dexmore saw something in her eyes that chilled him more than any threat. Not anger or hatred, but absolute certainty. So we showed them what happens when you mistake human mercy for human weakness. 2 days later, Dexmore found himself aboard a neutral trading station on the galaxy's rim. His escape pod equipped with long-range communication equipment. The human captain had kept her word. He was free to go, free to warn whoever would listen. His first transmission went out to the remaining Alliance worlds, his voice carrying across the void to warn his former allies of what was coming. As reports came back, he realized most of them already knew. Human fleets were appearing throughout Alliance space. Their massive formations demanding surrender. Some worlds chose to fight. They were crushed within hours, their defense fleets scattered like leaves in a storm. Others chose to surrender. and were treated with the same surprising mercy that Dexmore had experienced. The humans kept their word. They didn't slaughter civilians or destroy worlds for pleasure. They simply removed any threat to their existence with ruthless efficiency. As weeks passed, Dexmore continued broadcasting his warnings to anyone who would listen. The message was always the same. Humanity was no longer the weak prey species. The galaxy had dismissed. They had become the apex predators of known space. They tried peace first. He would always conclude his broadcasts, remembering Minyoung's words. But if you attack them, if you threaten their families or their freedom, they will not stop until you are extinct. The humans have shown the galaxy. A new truth, mercy, and strength can exist together, but weakness and aggression cannot. The responses to his warnings came from across the galaxy. Species that had never heard of humanity now knew to respect human space. Trade delegations that had once ignored human diplomatic requests now begged for audience. The galactic community that had rejected humanity's peaceful overtures now scrambled to make amends. But it was too late for the alliance. One by one, the remaining member species either surrendered or were destroyed. The mighty coalition that had ruled space for millennia crumbled in months. Brought down by a species they had dismissed as primitive mammals, in his final transmission, broadcast to the entire galaxy, Dexmore delivered his ultimate warning. The humans asked for peace, and we gave them war. They asked for friendship, and we gave them hatred. They asked for respect, and we gave them contempt. Now they have given us a lesson that the galaxy will never forget. Never mistake compassion for weakness, and never underestimate the fury of those who fight for their families. The broadcast ended, and Admiral Dexmore, last witness to the fall of the Dominion Empire, disappeared into the vast darkness between the stars. His warnings had served their purpose. The galaxy now knew that humanity was no longer prey. They had become the hunters. The end.